I signed the wire transfer while pretending not to cry into my latte. $30,000 vanished from my commission like it never existed. My reflection in the cafe window looked like a woman being mugged in daylight, but professionally. 2 tables over, Glenn was on Zoom, laughing with his mouth open like a trout choking on numbers. "Let's be honest," he said, "she'll still close. She needs it more than we do." He didn't see me. He never saw me. 3 days before the Wexler deal closed, $19 million, and my ticket out of this purgatory, I was cut from the inside. Glenn, our CFO, had unilaterally slashed my pay to balance Q4. That's what the Slack said. No warning, no discussion. Just a digital backhand at 7:48 a.m. I had just come back from 2 weeks of hand-holding Wexler's COO through a compliance freakout, missing my nephew's graduation, my anniversary, a rare vacation window. But sure, let's trim the fat. Apparently I was fat. What Glenn didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been quietly building my own exit plan for months. Not because I didn't believe in the work, I was the work, but because I stopped believing in them. The day before I got the pay cut, I'd received a manila envelope in my home mailbox. No return address. Inside, a printed email. An internal thread forwarded by accident, retracted 5 minutes later. Subject line, letter close, then clean house. Glenn's name was on it, so was Marcy from legal. The same Marcy who once confided, "You're the only woman here who makes them nervous. That's why they pretend to love you." I didn't even ask who sent it. I already knew. There's only one other person who calls me Scully when we drink martinis. So I smiled. That envelope didn't ruin me. It activated me, because 6 months ago, after yet another meeting where Glenn credited my entire pitch to our strategy team, I registered Raven North Consulting. LLC, own domain, bank account, trademark pending, and then I did something no one expected. I started double building every contract. One for the firm, one for me, quietly, carefully, legally airtight. The Wexler deal, oh honey, that contract was the blueprint. All I had to do was flip the switch. That switch was coming, and Glenn, my beloved trout-faced CFO, was going to choke on more than numbers this time, because I wasn't just closing the deal. I was taking it with me, and no one saw it coming, not even the person who would try to stop me. The keycard stopped working the next morning. Not my first clue, just the first one that hummed when I touched it, like it knew I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. The front desk girl, Chloe, tried to play dumb, but her eyes flicked toward the security camera like it was holding a loaded gun. "Oh, weird, must be a glitch," she said, then whispered, "You didn't hear it from me, but legal's been camped in Glenn's office since 7 a.m. So they were moving faster than I thought. Good. That meant they were scared." Upstairs, my desk looked normal, but emptier. A folder I kept locked in my drawer was gone. My USB stick, too. Someone had rifled through my files and left behind a mint from Glenn's candy bowl like a greasy calling card. Then I saw the calendar update. An invite. Wexler Strategy Sync execs only, no mention of me. No invite. Except Glenn, in his infinite spreadsheet arrogance, had forgotten one detail. I still had access to the back end of our contract system. Not officially. But my old passwords still opened doors IT forgot to lock. So I logged in. There it was. A brand new draft contract for Wexler, dated today, with my name scrubbed from every section. Glenn had replaced my LLC routing info with the firm's default bank, and the closer of record, him, my hand went numb, not from shock, from something colder, cleaner, a kind of rage that sharpens everything. He was going to steal it. Steal 7 months of negotiation. Steal the exit plan I'd architected piece by piece at 2 a.m. Steal my win. Turn it into another bullet point on his LinkedIn. But here's where it got interesting. In their rush to gut me, Glenn and Marcy hadn't noticed the clause I'd buried in the Wexler MSA draft. Section 7.4, Sole Proprietary Engagement, a clause that, in legal terms, made me the exclusive broker of record unless formally released in writing by both Wexler and myself. Wexler hadn't released me, and I damn sure hadn't signed a thing, which meant their new contract. It wasn't just unethical, it was fraud, and fraud has teeth. I clicked print. 20 pages slid out like ammunition. Then I made a call, not to Derek Wexler. Not yet, I called her. Because if you want to burn a CFO to the ground, you don't go through the front door. You call his ex-wife. And you remind her that he still has money hidden in the Cayman accounts he never disclosed in court. You ask if she'd like to help you make that public. Spoiler alert, she said yes. We had a meeting that night, at the same hotel where Glenn was planning his victory dinner. He'd reserved the private room. We just ordered the wine. The wine arrived before she did. A 2014 Brunello, his favorite. I chose it on purpose. Let him taste his own damn arrogance in the tannins. She walked in 10 minutes late, not by accident. Tall, immaculate, kind of woman who turns heads just by existing. And the kind of woman Glenn once tried to have erased from the company holiday cards. Still allergic to prenups? I asked, standing. She smirked. Only the ones drafted by men who cheat with their tax attorneys. We sat. She took out a folder. Not the sleek corporate kind, no, this was a CVS plastic envelope with a red zipper. That somehow made it worse. Cayman account, I said. She nodded. 3 of them. Wired them out under a consulting alias he invented when we separated. The man literally billed himself for executive insight. She slid me the files. And your price? I asked, though I already knew. She didn't blink. I want him disbarred from every board seat he's ever begged for. And I want to be in the room when it happens. We clinked glasses. Now we had the match. Back at the office, my Slack lit up like a Christmas tree soaked in gasoline. Glenn had gone full damage control. Team, we're excited to announce I'll be personally finalizing the Wexler contract. Big win for us. Please forward all client communications through exec channels. Standard protocol. Let's keep internal chatter lean. Eyes on Q4. Translation, shut up, don't leak, and pretend the woman you just shanked isn't still breathing. Marcy from legal sent me a DM. Just one line, you deserved better. That was the moment I knew she was cracking. I replied, you've got 24 hours to walk or you're walking into fire, because I hadn't just printed the contract. I had it timestamped, notarized, witnessed by a third party. Wexler's assistant, Jen, was already in on it. She'd seen the version Glenn was pushing and had texted me, is this legit? Feels off. I told her the truth, sent her my version. 10 minutes later, she responded with a photo. Glenn on a conference call, pointing at a slide labeled post-close transition plan. On that slide, a flowchart of the Wexler team reporting to Glenn, and under it, a bullet point, restructure sales team to streamline cost centers, phase out underperformers. He wasn't just stealing my deal. He was planning to fire me afterward. Let that sink in. The man cuts my pay, erases my name from my own contract, still plans to fire me like I'm the inconvenience in his success story. So I did the only thing left to do. I walked into HR, not to complain, not to whine. I handed them the notarized contract, the fraud flag, and the Cayman account trail with a post-it on top. Check Glenn's last 3 bonus structures. Now do the math. The HR director, sweet Lisa, who once knitted me a scarf, turned pale. Is this real? She whispered. I leaned in, real enough to end his career before his espresso cools. Then I turned and walked out. But I didn't go home. I went to Glenn's dinner, and I brought company. The maitre d' looked like he was about to shit a Moncler vest when I told him whose reservation we were joining. Private room, he stammered. Mr. Rothman specified no interruptions. I smiled and handed him a crisp envelope. Inside, a formal cease and desist drafted that morning by my lawyer, listing Raven North Consulting as the rightful broker of record on the Wexler deal, and explicitly forbidding any unauthorized presentation of the final term sheet. Tell Mr. Rothman he's about to violate contract law, I said, or he can finish his risotto in peace and meet us afterward for a little compliance chat. He blinked, nodded, vanished. Behind me, Glenn's ex-wife sipped her wine like she was watching the opening credits to a courtroom drama that ends with a guillotine. We waited 10 minutes, 15. Finally, the door creaked open. Glenn stepped out with the nervous gait of a man whose bowels had just been replaced with paperwork. He looked from me to her, and his smirk died mid-birth. Is this a joke? He croaked. I held up the contract. Only if you think felony fraud is funny. He looked at her. Are you seriously? She cut him off. Save it, Glenn. I already forwarded everything to my lawyer. You remember her, Rebecca Green? The one who ate you alive in mediation? He turned beet red. Sweat pooled under his collar. He grabbed my arm lightly, but just enough for me to register it. You're ruining everything, he hissed. Correction, I said. I built everything. You tried to steal it. Now you're going to choke on it. I handed him the cease and desist, now marked with a highlighter across section. 7.4. You didn't just breach protocol, Glenn. You tried to rewrite a live contract that includes a non-transferable clause when you never noticed because you were too busy color-coding your ego. He tore through the pages like he could will a loophole into existence. But I knew the expression that crept into his face, the one where his brain catches up to the reality that someone outplayed him in his own arena. I can fix this, he muttered. We'll just renegotiate the close already done, I said. Wexler signs my version tomorrow through Raven North. His eyes darted around like he was counting exits. You're bluffing. Call Derek, I said. Ask him who he's flying to Phoenix with for final signing. His phone buzzed. He ignored it, buzzed again. Then again. Finally, he looked, and the color drained out of his face completely. I didn't have to ask. It was Derek. He had already sent the confirmation. I hope the risoto's good, I whispered, leaning in close, because it's the last thing you'll expense under this company. Then I turned to leave, but I hadn't even reached the valet when Marcy stepped out of a black car and walked toward me like she was on trial and had just decided to switch sides. Can we talk? She said, breathless. I have something you need to see. And just like that, my story took a turn I didn't script. Marcy looked like hell had left her voicemail. Her blouse was inside out, lipstick smudged like she'd made out with a blender. No briefcase, just a cracked phone in one hand and a trembling coffee in the other. I'm not doing this for you, she said before I could open my mouth. I'm doing it because I've seen what happens to women who think loyalty is armor around here. She handed me the phone, a screenshot, then another, then a video. First screenshot was from an internal chat thread, legal team only. It read, if she fights it, we'll bury her in arbitration. Tell Glenn we're prepping the HR doc trail now. Next, a PDF draft of a formal complaint they were about to file against me for gross insubordination and violation of fiduciary trust. And then the video. Grainy, recorded off another screen. Glenn in his office, pacing. Phone on speaker. Voice on the line. CEO Adrian Cole. I don't care if she walks with the damn contract. Torch her credibility before she gets to the press, Adrian said. Glenn, I'll get Marcy to quietly plant a financial misconduct angle, say she fabricated vendor payments or something. My blood ran cold. They weren't just cutting me out. They were building a case to blacklist me. Marcy looked at me. I found the files while I was downloading the Wexler docs. Glenn told me to san it. She caught herself. He wanted me to erase the timestamps. I panicked. I screen recorded instead. I didn't speak for a solid 10 seconds. I just stared at the footage, then at her. She looked like a woman dangling over her own career's edge. I want protection, she said, low. If I forward all this to you, I want you to guarantee I don't get collateral damage when this blows up. I held her gaze. You get me those files. Full access. Never work for someone like Glenn again. You'll work against them. With me, her lip trembled. Then check your inbox in 5 minutes. We shook on it. I sat in my car, hands shaking, heart hammering like it wanted out of my chest. I had just gone from wounded to weaponized, because now this wasn't just about my commission or my contract. It was a company-wide conspiracy, an orchestrated takedown. And thanks to Marcy, I had the receipts. I called my lawyer. Going scorched earth, I said. Prepare a statement. You're dropping it with the press tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Then I called Derek Wexler. Change of plans, I told him. We're not just signing the deal tomorrow. I paused. We're going to bury a CFO and a CEO in the process. His voice didn't even flinch. Send me everything, he said, and meet me at the signing early. You'll want a front row seat for what happens next. And oh, did I, because I still had one ace left. And I was ready to play it in front of the entire board. The boardroom was colder than usual. Not from the A/C, Glenn had that locked at 68 like a control freak with a thermostat fetish, but from the silence. The kind of silence that forms when men in $3,000 suits know they're about to watch someone die, professionally speaking. It was 8:58 a.m. I sat at the far end of the glass table, lone but not unarmed. My leather binder was closed in front of me. My phone was face down, but recording. Across from me, Adrian Cole, our too-polished CEO, who always smelled like imported lemon wood and whose voice had the wet smoothness of a con man doing TED talks on empathy. To his right, Glenn, chewing the inside of his mouth like it owed him money. His tie was off-center. His hands kept twitching toward the laptop he wasn't allowed to open yet. Miss Vance, Adrian said, steepling his fingers before we begin, Let me just express how unfortunate it is that we're here under these circumstances. Likewise, I said, flipping open the binder. I was hoping we could have saved the dramatics for your company's holiday party. A few people snorted. Adrian didn't. I've reviewed the situation. Glenn has explained everything. I trust you understand our position. Sure, I said. Except the part where your position includes felony conspiracy, corporate theft, attempted defamation, and about 6 different violations of SEC compliance laws. Adrian blinked. Then I laid it out. Printed transcripts. Marcy's screenshots. A forensic report from a third-party tech firm confirming manipulation of contract metadata, initiated from Glenn's credentials. Each page landed on the table like a slow-loading guillotine. I'm also in possession, I continued, of recorded audio between Mr. Rothman and yourself, in which you discuss fabricating claims to force me out post-deal. I've sent copies to legal, the press, and 3 members of this board already. Adrian's mask cracked, but only slightly. This is outrageous. You're attempting to blackmail a corporation. No, I said, standing. I'm liberating myself from one. In the process, I'm giving the Wexler deal something you two never could, legitimacy. I turned to the door. Right on cue, Derek Wexler walked in, with 2 lawyers and a media liaison behind him. He dropped a copy of the finalized deal on the table. My name, Raven North Consulting, was stamped across every page in blue ink. This is the only contract we're recognizing, he said. I've just informed your shareholders via public filing that all future engagements will be routed through Raven North exclusively. Glenn paled. Adrian stood, mouth open. You don't have the right, Adrian stammered. You're poisoning our reputation. I picked up my phone. Hit play. Glenn's voice filled the room. She'll fold. Women like her always do. Burn her if she gets loud. Silence. Then I hit send. The audio, screenshots, legal proof were uploaded to 3 news outlets, a whistleblower forum, and Marcy's personal LinkedIn. The boardroom erupted. Adrian lunged forward, barking legal threats. Glenn muttered something about miscommunication, but no one was listening. They were too busy watching Wexler shake my hand and then walk out. With me, not as an employee, as a partner. The news broke before I even reached the lobby. CFO, CEO of tech giant under fire for contract tampering and retaliation plot. Headline 1. Whistleblower reveals fraud scheme days before $19M deal closes without firm involvement. Headline 2. By the time I reached the valet, my inbox had collapsed under NDAs, job offers, and 2 speaking invites titled Women Who Don't Fold. But the real reward, sound of Glenn's name being stripped from the company site faster than a bad Yelp review. Adrian tried to rally, issued a public statement about rogue actors and ongoing investigations. But you can't put the toothpaste back after it's been weaponized. Marcy met me at the hotel bar that evening. She looked 10 years younger and 5 shades freer. You know they've retained crisis PR, she said, sipping a whiskey sour like it was earned. They're gonna need CPR, I said, once the board sees what's still coming. Because we weren't done. That Cayman account file, it had layers. Glenn hadn't just funneled personal bonuses, he'd been marking up third-party vendor contracts and skimming off the top. And guess who'd been listed as an auxiliary approver on those? Adrian. My lawyer, God bless her, called it a perfect storm of arrogance and poor encryption. Meanwhile, Derek and I were already fielding requests from 3 of Glenn's former clients. One of them, an old pharmaceutical whale, asked if Raven North handled ethical compliance training. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on a peanut. That weekend, I drove to my sister's lake house. No laptop, no noise, just me, the water, and a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for day that finally arrived. I sat on the dock and opened it alone. No toasts, no speeches. Just a single moment to be. Remember the version of myself who used to rehearse polite objections in the mirror, who'd once cried in a locked supply closet because Glenn told her assertiveness isn't attractive. She was gone now. In her place stood someone who didn't just survive the system. She rewired it, and in 2 days, I'd be standing in front of 600 women at a tech summit in DC, telling them exactly how I did it. But not before one last piece fell into place, because on Monday morning, a federal subpoena would land on Adrian Cole's desk. Courtesy of Marcy. She had one final favor, and she'd scheduled it for 9 o'clock a.m. Same time, Glenn used to hold his Monday mindshare meetings. You know, the ones I was never invited to. At exactly 9 a.m. on Monday, Adrian's world imploded with the precision of a Swiss watch strapped to a stick of C4. Subpoena was hand-delivered by a federal agent in a windbreaker too stiff to be casual. The receptionist tried to stall, but the agent dropped the envelope on Adrian's desk mid-call, while he was trying to charm a journalist into retracting their story. The call didn't end well. Neither did his career. By 9:07, every partner on the board had a copy of the federal findings. Marcy, bless her merciless soul, had not only turned over the financial records, but also submitted an affidavit detailing the internal directive to frame me for fabricated misconduct. Her signature was flawless. Her resignation letter, even better. I no longer wish to participate in the institutional silencing of competence. Glenn's severance vanished before it was even processed. Adrian's executive privileges were revoked so fast, he couldn't even access the server to delete his Vision 2030 slide deck, one that used my Wexler deal as the lead case study. They tried to scrub me from the archives. Too late. The press ran a follow-up titled "Woman Executed Her Own Exit Strategy" and took the $19M deal with her. And my favorite line came from an op-ed in Fortune. Raven North isn't just a firm, it's a warning shot. I stood backstage at the DC summit, mic clipped to my collar, staring at the crowd of women in suits, jeans, hijabs, locks, Laubautins. Some were interns, some were execs, all of them watching the door like they were waiting for something more than inspiration. I stepped out, lights hit, applause swelled. I opened with the truth: I was never supposed to be in this room. I was supposed to be erased quietly, discredited, replaced. Pause. But I learned one thing very early. They don't prepare for a woman who documents everything, trusts her gut, and registers her own LLC before they even realize you've stopped smiling at meetings. Laughter, nods, silence too, the kind that means they felt it. I closed the keynote with a story they hadn't heard. One last twist I'd kept just for them. The Wexler deal, I didn't just close it, I licensed it, under my terms, my conditions, my brand, which meant every time Glenn's old firm used a system built off that structure, they'd owe me royalties. Not a lot. Just enough to remind them, quarter after quarter, that I was still here. And every time they cut that check, they'd see the same words printed in the bottom corner: Raven North Consulting authorized, independent, irreplaceable. I walked offstage into a sea of outstretched hands and camera flashes. And in that moment, I knew they'd tried to erase me. Instead, I signed my name in permanent ink.